Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Broncos with Joey Richards and Frankie Abbott. Frankie, how are you doing today, my man? It was super crazy Broncos day. You were saying it before the show. It feels like it's the first day of the actual Broncos season.
Yeah,
But first, before we get into all the Broncos stuff, I want to know about your day. How are you doing? Everything like that.
I'm doing pretty well. I got a new litter box. I got a litter robot, which it's like an automatically rotating litter box that tracks my cat's weight. Not important, doesn't involve the football show, but it's awesome. So that was pretty hype. And just watching that all day. Just been, doing whatever, working. How have you been, Joey?
Dude, it's been a pretty good day. I had work, the regular grind. That's what we have to do. And then I also had some other stuff happen where it was just like all the football stuff was coming up, all of the football stuff, all the Broncos stuff. It was just a kind of, I don't know. Let's just get straight into it, man, because I don't want to talk about this anymore. I want to talk about the football stuff because it's so exciting. I think there's a lot to talk about here. Sean Payton, the guy's not holding back, Frank.
No.
He is not holding back whatsoever. He had some big-time quotes. I first want to start off with the Jets one, where he was taking shots at, hey, this looks like, I don't know if you guys have been watching the Hard Knocks and everything like that. They're trying to win the offseason, not the season. I'm paraphrasing here, but this is what he said. And he was like, I remember being a Giants coach. And the Washington Commanders picked up Deion Sanders at the time, and they were talking about they had a dream team. That team ended up winning like 8 games is what he was talking about. How do you feel, Frankie, about those quotes? Does it scare you at all that he's poking a bear there with the New York Jets? Just picked up Aaron Rodgers, this fantastic football team. I mean, they were good last year with Zach Wilson. Now they have Aaron Rodgers.
I mean,
tell me about it.
Definitely a little bit. I mean, it's definitely just a case of, Sean Payton is here, man. He wanted to state his claim, plant his flag, whether people in the Broncos building or around the league are going to like it or not. I mean, Roberts, the initial comments that Saleh said where it's like Payton's been around for a long time. Like the man can kind of say what he wants. Like it's kind of very true. When you're a tenured guy in the league, when you see something like that as off kilter, as, not friendly as it might be. I mean, we all saw what was happening last year. It doesn't take a mind quite as great as Sean Payton's to be able to call out just the tragedy of coaching that was taking place last year in Denver. So, it's great. I'm honestly very glad to see it because I think us as fans have been seeing it for far too long in the front office, and sadly a lot of the PR in the media, it doesn't really, I'd say, go as feet to the fire as it should a lot of the time with this team that continues to just be less or below mediocre. They're bad. They've been bad for 6-7 years now, and it's time for some heads to get claimed and some the personality in the building to change, the culture to shift, and Sean Payton is here to do that, whether he hurts some feelings or not.
Yeah, and Frankie, I'll read some of the quote. I'll just read the thing. He said, there's so much dirt around that. There's 20 dirty hands for what was allowed. Because you were alluding to, the Broncos aspect of it all. So I'll get into that part as well. I'll restart. There's so much dirt around that. There's 20 dirty hands for what was allowed, tolerated in the freaking training room, the meeting rooms, the offense. I don't know, Hackett. A lot of people had dirt on their hands. It wasn't just Russell. He didn't just flip. He still has it. Let's talk about that piece in particular there. And I really want to break down this entire thing because I think there's more to it than what actually just words, right? Do you think this quote, if I'm just read you that first very big part, how much of this quote is just to protect Russell Wilson? How much of it is that, and how much of it are his true feelings?
So I think it's a little bit of both. And I don't know if I'd say protect as much as I'd say bolster. You want to give him a little bit of confidence going into the season. I think is such a big part of last year was Russ just completely lost himself on the mental side of the game, along with all the tragic stuff or the bad stuff that was going on in the coaching aspect and the pre-snap and everything involved in the offense. I think once Russell lost his confidence, we kind of stopped seeing him really kind of play at that high level until we got to the last month of the season. He kind of turned it around a little bit, but I think this is just kind of something to help kind of push your quarterback into hopefully being in a positive position. I think it's maybe not entirely true. I think we all kind of know that while Russell Wilson isn't entirely to blame, he's still definitely a big part, if not majorly to blame for what took place last season. But, it's like Sean said, there are a lot of dirty hands. It is interesting that, it seems like he kind of acknowledges that some of those dirty hands are still here, and he's not scared to kind of.
Right.
I think a big part of this is him trying to kind of weed some of those people out.
Let me stop you right there because I want to carry on into the part of quote where it actually, I think, kind of says that.
Yep.
And it says it doesn't happen often where an NFL team or organization gets embarrassed. And that happened here. Part of it was their fault relative to spending so much time trying to win the offseason, the PR and circumstance, matching people around and all this stuff. We're not doing any of that. It might have been one of the worst coaching jobs in the history of the NFL. That's how bad it was. That's kind of the main piece. That's what really blew up, I think, there. And I guess it's just like you alluded to it right there. He called shots at the GM. He called shots at the president in this article that came out today. I really, really think, Frankie, if I were to really just break this down and summarize it, it's changes are coming. Mm-hmm. And I also think that he's trying to protect Russ in the process a little bit. You know, he's his quarterback right now. He's going to try to make it seem like we have all the confidence in this player in the world. That might not actually be the case. I think that might be the coaching talk part of it. But he's sending also shots while he's uplifting Russ. He's sending shots at the president. He's sending shots at George Paton. He's sending shots in this at players and people currently with the Broncos right now. I personally, dude, I just think that I really just think that I would be shocked to see George Paton be around after the season. That was always been in my brain, but especially after reading this, it's really like, hey, dude, you're going to have to fit in or you're out.
Or you're out.
And then we're already getting reports from, Ben Albright tweeted today. He said there's a lot of people unhappy in the Broncos organization about this quote. I really think Sean Payton's just trying to see who's unhappy about this. Okay, you don't really want to conform to my system. Mm-hmm. You can get a first ticket for your first ticket out of here, I think is kind of what's going on. Do you agree or disagree?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it seems like he's saying like, hey, I've got the most sway in the room right now. I am the captain of this ship. If you're not going to believe in me as the captain, if you're not going to follow what I say, follow the commands of my orders. I mean, here's the big thing. Sean Payton has friends. He has other guys around the league. If George Payton's to leave his seat as GM, Sean Payton probably has a list of 3 to 5 guys right now that he'd be willing to call and be like, this guy I know I will be able to work with. Let's get him in the building. And while, I think a lot of Broncos fans really love George Paton, the talent evaluator. I do as well, somewhat. But like, he will be able to be replaced with someone that might be able to fall in line with it, where I think it's exactly like you said. We might have been sold that, hey, this offseason we might be able to make this work. But at the end of the day, he's the first head on the chopping block if anything goes wrong this season. It's going to be George Paton because, this is year 3 of his team. This is his full baby. He has completely built this thing from the ground up. And whether, all the excuses, all the injuries, all the poor coaching hires, like it's all on him at this point. So this needs to shift into being Sean Payton's team, and the guy responsible for this past era is probably going to be on his way out. So I completely agree. Where I think it's a tough road for George Paton, and I mean I think a big thing we talked about this offseason too is I don't really know what George Paton can do at this point to kind of win himself into the good graces of like Sean Payton or the the ownership and everything. Like I don't really know what he can do at this point. It's not like he really had a ton of draft capital. I'd say his draft pretty much did as well as it could this year, but I don't think that's enough for Sean to be like, I'm keeping this guy around, And I know it's not all Sean's decision.
Right. I think overall it is Sean's decision. And Dal gets in the comments here. Let's see if it's working. He says, when he says people are unhappy, I don't think that includes ownership, in my opinion. I think Greg Penner signed off on giving Sean Payton this power and voice. And Dal, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I really do think you hit the nail on the head there. It's just the moment that the Broncos traded a first-round draft pick for a head coach was the moment that they gave him this amount of power. It just really is. You can't get rid of a coach after 1 or even 2, and then you're really sitting there even worrying about 3 years after trading a player that you would have on cost control for 5. Yeah. You just can't do that. That doesn't make sense. A top 32 pick in the draft. So they gave him that power the moment they did that. And then on top of it, they gave him a massive contract. Sean Payton is here to stay. And this article, what it indicates is I know I'm here to stay. I don't care who I'm pissing off in this building because all of these people outside of ownership will change before I do. It is what it is. That he's flexing his muscles saying, you're expendable, you're expendable, you're expendable, you're expendable. I'm not. I'm here to stay right now. And he's going to make the team in his vision. Now, what is your opinion on that, Frankie? Do you think that's a good or bad thing that he has this much power?
I mean, as you know, this is kind of a cheat out answer. I guess we'll kind of see. I don't really know. I mean, it's up to Sean Payton. I think it'll work out better than it has these past 7 years. But as far as, is the team going to end up being a super quick turnaround into a Super Bowl contender anytime soon because of the foresight of Sean Payton or the leadership of Sean Payton? I'm not entirely sure about that. But I mean, I think it'll be better than how it's been for the past 7 years. I mean, that's enough. But he's making some bold claims. I mean, he's saying this year they're going to be a playoff team, which I think it's a lot to say in this AFC, man.
Yeah, I know. I'm not really totally on board with that part of it, where a guy, I don't know. It's hard to go from as bad as they were last year, especially Sean Payton's even saying that. He's like, this team was terrible. They were embarrassed is what he said. And that's hard to do in the NFL. Going from being a team that was embarrassed or embarrassing to a playoff team, that is a massive jump.
Yeah.
Especially when you're not going out there. Also, like he said, making the massive moves. He's going out there and just kind of putting pieces around and being like, yeah, I think my coaching is that much better than what Hackett's was. Russell is going to listen to me. He didn't listen to you. You kind of were just ran through. Like, he just let you do. You just let Russ do whatever he wanted to do. I'm going to change that up. He's just changing things throughout the locker room and adding some pieces at positions that aren't the flashiest and saying we could be a playoff team this next year. I think that's very bold, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one thing that's notable too, and I mean, this is something that we've discussed, is when he talks about the 10 to 20 hands, I mean, it's quite a message to send right before the start of training camp when guys are going to start to be worried about getting cut. Guys are going to start worried about getting traded. Like, this is when guys are going to be fighting for spots. And he's saying, hey, I know for a fact that this was not all on Russell last year. I know that's what the national media was trying to put out. This was on the embarrassment of coaching. And this was sadly on a lot of players as well. It's going to be interesting seeing who of these, I think some of these bigger names and these leaders from the past few years who have kind of built their, I'd say, name in Denver kind of fall in line with Sean Payton, because I'm sure some of them are going to come along for the ride. But I think we're going to very quickly see if you're not getting on board, you're going to lose snaps. You might be all out off the team. I think that when you talk about the receiver room, especially.
Yeah, no, totally. And D-Bronx gets in the comments here, Frank, and he says, I still can't believe he called Hackett out by name. You know what made that comment even funnier was that he said he didn't even know the Hackett guy. That's what made that comment so funny. It wasn't just like, yeah, Nathaniel Hackett, he's bad. It's like, I don't really even know the Hackett guy, but this is one of the worst coaching jobs ever. I thought this whole thing was pretty funny.
Right. And just not to pile on, but I think it even says something that, like, Sean Payton is like, man, who hired this guy? And then he's looking at George Payton and that committee, and he's like, man, those guys might not be the people I want running. Joey, oh.
Hey, Frankie, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, did I freeze or you freeze?
Whatever. We're going to keep on pushing through. Billy Turner, though, then.
Okay, keep going.
Billy Turner, they're responding on Instagram and just quote tweeting us by being like, calling Sean Payton a bum and all this stuff, which is kind of crazy. Like, you can say a lot of things maybe about Sean Payton. He's talking about the what was it, the scandal, the gate, bounty gate and everything. But calling Sean Payton a bum is pretty funny when that's a guy with a Super Bowl ring and you're Billy Turner.
Billy Turner's always been like a super. Do you remember him in this last offseason calling media out, Frankie?
No, I don't.
He did do that. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he hates media. He hates people reporting on the NFL. He hates all those, and he's not afraid to be vocal about it, which is fine. I don't really have a problem with it.
He also seems to hate playing.
Yeah, I
got his ass.
He did, but I don't know. I don't really take much to it. I thought it was kind of funny. I thought the comment was funny. I thought immediately getting reports that Will McDonald was getting praised for beating him for a sack right after was funny. The whole thing was funny. I understand where Billy Turner is coming from because Nathaniel Hackett is the guy that keeps giving him opportunities. He's been on 3 teams now, all with Nathaniel Hackett. So, yeah, I'm sure he does love him. He keeps paying his paycheck. I would love the guy, too. These guys are royally paid, and Nathaniel Hackett is the reason why for Billy Turner. He's buttering his bread, so it is just what it is.
It was wild seeing the other part of it, too, because he's like, man, I'm sure Sean Payton got to Denver and, like, realized how bad the situation is there. And it's like, dude, first of all, the coach that was running the show last year is your offensive coordinator now. Second of all, like, damn, man, like, you're taking shots at the other players on the team now. Like, there's just going to be a lot of beef. That was a week 5. That week 5 game, Jets Broncos, is going to be really fun. Like, again, man, like I said, like, that Jets roster, like, while I hope the Broncos can be good enough to beat that Jets team by like a week 5 game, like after the first month of the season, like it's a solid team. That's a really good defense. That Denver offensive line better be damn good by that point in the year.
Yeah, and you know what? And then also the guy that hired the offensive line coach that none of you guys liked whatsoever. And I know that for a fact. I've heard that multiple times from multiple different people in the know, is that there wasn't anybody across that offensive line that liked Butch Berry even a little bit. Nathaniel Hackett hired him. Nathaniel Hackett hired Otten. Nathaniel Hackett hired all the guys that put you in this bad situation. It's just kind of ironic, I guess, is all there. But are you ready to move on to the main topic of today's show, Frankie?
Yeah, let's get it.
All right, perfect. We are going to be talking about, we have alluded to this entire show, about how if you aren't fitting in to what Sean Payton wants to do, you could be traded. Just like a snap of a finger, you could be gone. He's not going to care. So we're going to discuss different players that could end up being trade targets either right now or by the midseason or by season's end at some point during there. Frankie, start us off. Who do you think could be traded there?
All right. Well, the first name I have written down is Courtland Sutton. He's obviously in the picture down there. We heard about Courtland Sutton rumors all offseason, and I'm not necessarily saying he's going to get traded in preseason or anything, but I think if this team, if Marvin Mims or Marquez Callaway early in camp really start impressing, if Courtland Sutton doesn't really, make a name for himself or kind of reclaim his spot as one of those top 2, top 3 receivers, like I don't think Marvin Mims, even though he's dealing with the hamstring issues and isn't going to be available for the next week, I don't think he was drafted to just sit as the wide receiver for the entire season on this team. I don't believe that's the case. I think they're going to try to get him snaps on the field as much as possible. And I think I think Courtland Sutton makes the most sense because you have a guy in Marquez Callaway who I think kind of replaces his skill set somewhat decently. I'm not going to say he's equally the talent at all. I still love Courtland Sutton a lot, but I think he's a name that we could see quickly moved out. I know Troy Rank reported the other day when he was on the show with, I think it was Connor Donnick's show, that what is it that Sean Payton's not pleased with the fact that this receiver room has been one of the highest paid for the past couple of years, and they have not been producing like it. I know that there's excuses to go with that, but I mean, he's not happy with how this receiver room has produced in the past couple of years, and I think that definitely affects Courtland Sutton, I'd say, more than a lot of these other guys, since Tim Patrick was dealing with an ACL tear and you still have Judy on a rookie deal. I think that kind of directly goes at guys like Courtland Sutton, who's been paid pretty decently to, be, I'd say, a pretty middling receiver at this point. So it'll be interesting seeing if they have guys that we hear like, oh man, we're hearing great things about Marvin Mims all throughout camp. We're hearing great things about Marquez Callaway. Maybe we're not hearing about Sutton. It wouldn't be shocking to me if there's a team calling for wide receiver help early in the year and we see Courtland Sutton get moved for a day 2 pick.
You think it'll be a day 2 pick?
What was it reported? I think it was a 2nd round pick that the Ravens were reported to do earlier in the offseason.
2nd round pick?
Was it, or was it maybe it was a day 3 pick? Maybe I'm just completely mistaken. Maybe it was
a round 4 pick.
Round 4 pick? Okay, well then I'm completely mistaken. Ignore me.
If it was a round 2 pick, I think what they wanted was a round 2 pick.
Okay, that's what it was.
Correctly.
Okay, well,
what was that?
Even so, I think if they end up seeing that they have better options in the room and they can still get a pick that high, I think they'll end up doing it.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. I definitely could see that, Frankie. I don't think that these guys were dangled out there for nothing. I think that they were shopped around, and even as of recently, we've heard that the Patriots have been looking at Courtland Sutton. There's been multiple teams, and all it takes is one team getting an injury, and then what's going on with this Courtland Sutton thing? We're desperate. We think we're a Super Bowl contender over here. How can I get Courtland Sutton? What do I have to pay? And then that team might even be willing to overpay to get a reliable receiver on their team. The Broncos might end up finally getting that. Hey, a team offered us a second. Do we take it or do we leave it?
Mm-hmm.
That's something that you have to wrap around in your brain. Now, I'm curious, Frankie, I'm going to go off of this. Jerry Jeudy was another player that was thrown out there at the exact same position as Courtland Sutton this offseason. I think his price tag was more of a first-round pick than Courtland Sutton's second-round pick. Do you think we were kind of talking about, hey, if you're not fitting in, if you don't like what's going on, you're probably going to get moved? Do you think or have any indication that one of these two might not like what's going on more than the other?
No, not necessarily. But I do think as far as like who would be likely, I think Judy definitely makes it towards close to the trade deadline if he was to get moved.
Okay.
Like to me, I think they're going to be much more willing to like wait on Judy. And I don't think they're going to move Sutton anytime soon either. I think that would probably take early in the season if like it gets to like week 3, week 4 and the passing offense isn't kind of going that way. Because I think again, it'll take time for guys like Marvin Mims to kind of get acclimated into the offense. But I think if you kind of recognize by like the trade deadline that maybe this isn't going to be a playoff team and you've got guys like Judy that teams are still calling about, willing to kind of amplify their offense and give up maybe like a first round or second round pick, I think that's completely possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see either. I really could. I think Judy should have the higher price tag, being that he's younger. I think that he's been better as of recent as well. I need to see Cortland Sutton just come back to that normal self, and he would be someone that I would never trade. Curious, Frankie. Let's go down the path that the Broncos are struggling by the trade deadline, week 8. They are having a season where it is, let's say, they've won 3 games by week 8. What would it take, or would you consider trading a Cortland Sutton at that point?
Oh yeah.
Okay. What would it take? Let's say the Broncos are 3 games. Oh, they've only won 3 games, and he is playing about the same as he did last year. What would it take?
Probably like honestly, if they could end up getting a 4th for him at that point, or like it kind of depends on how he's playing too. I guess it would probably be like a 4th or a 5th. I don't really remember how many years are left on Cortland Sutton's contract, but it would probably end up being like around that 4th round price.
Okay, interesting. I could see that.
Because I think such a big part of it too, and I mean this is really kind of the sad part about the discussion. This is why this is such important. This team needs money for next season. Like this team is going to have to figure out ways to create cap space, and the Russell Wilson deal, whether they end up cutting him or keeping him next year, gets a lot bigger next offseason. So a name like Cortland Sutton, who's costing you somewhere between, I believe he's at like $17 million. I think it's one of the bigger years of his cap hit next season. Being able to move that name off your books or get a name like maybe like a Garrett Bowles off your books would be very useful if they could do that, if they could kind of get that name out of there.
Yeah, totally. And Frankie, you led me right into mine. I'm going with Garrett Bowles, man. I think Garrett Bowles coming off of injury, contract coming up, he's getting paid a ton, all of that different type of stuff. And hey, from the year he really grew into an elite, he's always struggled, and then he got really good, and then he's kind of been average since, kind of got down to average. What is he going to look like off of injury? And is that worth the space that you have? If the Broncos are really struggling, I think that they should trade him. I think that they should be looking to draft a tackle early in the draft. If that's the case, if they're not doing well, there's so many good tackles. Frank, you've highlighted a couple on Twitter. In this next year's draft, you have Joe Alt from Notre Dame. You have
Olufashanu.
Yes, from Penn State. You have these different type of guys up there. If the Broncos were in range to grab one, and you could get an extra draft pick for Bulls to a team that needed a left tackle to go and compete, I could see that happening. I could definitely see that happening. And honestly, I would support it if the Broncos.
Yeah. No, and I mean, it kind of would work out too, since you have a guy like Cam Fleming able to play that swing spot. If you had to inject him for the final 8 weeks of the season, I mean, again, these are things that you don't want to have to do, but this is a team that kind of needs to create money. And if they can acquire draft capital while getting that money, I mean, that only helps Sean Payton kind of accelerate this rebuild and kind of turn this team into the team he wants to make. So I think that's a great option. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious, Frankie, what does the Broncos record need to be for you to not want to trade anybody?
I don't know. It probably depends upon how they look against some of the better teams, because I believe they'll play the Chiefs once by that point. Right. So that game will be important. The Jets game will be important. If they can win a couple of those games, I don't know. Because I don't want them to completely take it apart, because I think it's important for them to at least be able to get on a road of competency this year. Like, while I do want them to be able to have as many assets as possible, the team needs to look reasonably competent this year. I think that's important for the entire building. I think that's important for morale. I think that's important for just the team going forward. Whether they're good or not, that's left to be seen, but they can't just be what they've been the last few years where they're just kind of trying to piece together this bandaged together roster of third and fourth stringers. I don't think that's going to be what they want to do this year.
Conversation, Frankie, right there, what you're bringing up. Because do you think I'm kind of disagree with you in the fact that I think that just keeping the team around is kind of the bandage. I think that if you are rebuilding, you might as well really rebuild. You might as well look like the Texans the next year. I think that's what rebuilding looks like. I think that the Broncos have always been trying to keep the team together where they're only a few pieces apart, but those positions are really hard to get. And that it always feels like they're putting the Band-Aid on it without actually rebuilding, to me.
Yeah. No, that's completely fair. I agree with what you're saying, but I don't think Sean Payton's going to take that route. I mean, we're already seeing he's saying this is going to be a playoff team. I think he'll move pieces that are smart pieces to move, as silly as that might sound. But I don't think he's just going to take this thing down to the bearings and try to rebuild the whole thing, because I don't think that's what Sean Payton wants. I think he wants to try to win a Super Bowl as quickly as he can, but I don't think he's here to just completely throw everything out the window. But I do think that most of the pieces on the team are kind of tradable at this point. So it's kind of, I don't know. There's kind of a lot. There's a lot to it, I guess. I don't think at the end of the day he's going to end up trading all of the players we talk about, but I won't be shocked if he moves one or two of them. I think there's a good question from Dal here. Hold on.
That's what I wanted to highlight right now. I'll highlight it. He says, "Do you think anyone is untouchable, or is everyone fair game?" That's interesting. I think that there's one player on this team untouchable.
Patrick Surtain.
It's Patrick Surtain. He's the only one that's untouchable to me. I think everyone else can be traded for the right price.
Yeah.
Finding that trade value is kind of tough on some of these guys. I don't know what Justin Simmons is worth. I have no idea if the Broncos were to go out there and be like, we are trading Justin Simmons, or Justin Simmons requested a trade. Let's work under that so that we don't get yelled at. Justin Simmons requests a trade because the Broncos are yet again not doing well. He wants to go compete with a Super Bowl team. What do you think the market value is for Justin Simmons? I have no clue. It's hard for me to evaluate it.
Here's the thing. I'm probably the most I think that the Broncos, if they got an offer or the right offer, which to me would be maybe a day 2 and a day 3 pick, if you could somehow get a first round pick from a team, I think you should do it. If there was really some Super Bowl contending team, man, I'm trying, maybe the Eagles want to somehow just throw more into the ring and just be like, hey, we'll throw you our first rounder this year. It's probably gonna be pick 30 or 31, but we'll get Justin Simmons. Because here's the thing I wrote down is either someone he ends up getting moved, or sadly someone like PJ Locke might end up not making the roster, who I think we all like, and is kind of a younger safety who I think costs a lot less. This team is 6 deep at safety right now with the bringing back of Kareem Jackson and the drafting of JL Skinner, and I don't think JL Skinner is going to get cut. Where it's
and then you even
Caden Stearns is a very liked guy around the building. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I don't see a world where Caden Stearns is being gotten rid of, but maybe he's a trade candidate. This is a deep safety room, and I think a talented one that you're not cutting any of those guys. I think you're trying to get something out of them.
Well, and then you add in, Frankie, that I'm not even sure what Sean Payton's, or in this case, I guess Vance Joseph's idea is for this defense. You have Sean Payton saying that it is a split safety system, and that's what we're going to run. But then you look at the draft, and you're drafting defenders that don't really fit the system.
And Vance Joseph doesn't do that.
Vance Joseph doesn't do that. So I'm not even sure, what does Justin Simmons look like in a single high system?
Very true.
I have no idea. I really couldn't tell you. I think he could operate it, but I think he's elite in the single or in this double. This you have multiple safeties, giving a multiple look system. The Vic Fangio, the Evero system that he's really blown up in. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I don't know. It's interesting. JL Skinner is a guy that stands out like a sore thumb in the safety room. He's bigger. He's taller. He hits harder. He's your typical I think he can play more deep than your typical box safety, but I think he's really kind of your box safety.
He reminds me of Muwakamu from the Cowboys, and I probably butchered that name, but the big safety from the Cowboys.
Curse from the Cowboys.
Yep, more him.
Your Jaron Curse. He's one of those guys who really better fits a single high system as kind of a box safety, I think. Or Riley Moss that fits that same system as a cornerback. I think that you might see a lot of changes across this defense. It might not just be one guy. I think that a lot of these different players could be changed around and moved because of the system you're running. Do you agree with me there?
Oh, I completely agree. I did want to throw out one more untouchable I thought of.
Yeah,
I think Quinn Miners is untouchable. Quinn Miners is so damn I think he's gonna excel so much in the system, and for what he is, he's one of the most valuable offensive line contracts in the league right now, straight up. So it's kind of I don't see a world where they're like, oh, let's move on from Quinn Miners, because I also just think he's gonna excel so much in the Sean Payton system. So that's probably the other untouchable I'd throw out. I think. I mean, outside of the guys they signed this year, because I don't think they're going to be trading Mike McGlinchey the year after they signed him. I don't think they're going to do that. But right.
Okay, I think untouchable in the way that to the point where another team where it would get unrealistic, I guess. No team is offering 2 first-round picks for Quinn Miners.
Of course,
you know what I mean? So it's that. So it is. He's untouchable in the realistic vision of what a team would offer for him. I agree with you there.
Yeah.
D-Bronx hops in. He said Justin Simmons played in the single high system before. Didn't make his leap until Fangio came to town, though. That is a great point. He did play with Wade Phillips. That's where the system he was drafted under. But no,
2018 year too.
Yeah, he didn't make that jump until the split safety system and stuff like that. Frankie, do you have any other Broncos on the trade block that you want to highlight?
Yeah, I've got a few. I feel like the inside linebacker room, something's got to give there. They're 4 deep right now when you talk about Drew Sanders. And I've been kind of highlighting all week on my Twitter with some little clippies. Drew Sanders needs to get on the field as much as possible, whether that's at edge, whether that's off ball, whether that's Mike, Sam, wherever. They need to get him on the field. I want to see this dude play. And they've got guys like Josie Jewell and Jonas Griffith. Josie's on a bit of a bigger contract. They brought back Alex Singleton this year, so I don't think they're going to be moving him. But I wouldn't be shocked if, maybe Drew Sanders is impressing early on. If you can end up getting a day 3 pick for Jonas Griffith, who was brought in here, I believe, for a 7th round pick. If you could maybe flip him to a team that needs some help there, maybe they end up moving someone from the edge room. But I think there's going to be an odd man out there. And again, I think I think these are too talented of players to just end up getting released or getting put on practice squads without them getting claimed. Another guy I have on here is Jonathan Cooper, sadly, who me and you are both big Coop guys. But sadly, another guy from that last regime who just this team is getting deeper at some of these positions. I don't know if they're necessarily getting better, but he's got competition there. I don't think he has a leg up he's from a different system. So as much as it would pain me, Josie Jewell is a guy who, while I wouldn't love if they did it, if they said we're just going to run the year with Jonas Griffith and Alex Singleton as our 2, we'll have Drew Sanders kind of popping around wherever he needs to go. We can find another guy on the block, and maybe you can get, I don't know what you could get for Josie Jewell, but that wouldn't shock me too much. So he's another guy I wanted to point out.
Interesting. I think so. That one's interesting. I could see it happening. Now, I will say if I were the Broncos, I wouldn't. Just because, hey, guys, you got to be deep somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're either giving up on it or you want to be deep some places. I think that one, Frankie, might be a week 8 trade. Do you agree or disagree with me there?
I don't know, man. The cuts are going to be tough this year. As we said, the safety room has 6 guys I like. That linebacker room, your off-ball linebacker room has 4 guys I like. I'd say the edge room, it's getting smaller and smaller, and I think I'd almost rather while yes, I'd like there to be a spot on the team that's stronger. Am I really going to be that do I think it's really that much of a deal breaker if they have Jonas Griffith playing as the 4th most snap getting inside linebacker? No. If they could get somehow a 5th or something for him from a desperate team who ends up, like we say, enduring some random injury and needs some help, I could end up seeing that being a pretty positive move. I'm not,
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Because do you think it's that much more advantageous to have him just be special teams help or a possible depth replacement in case there's an injury?
The thing is, dude, I don't know. I just feel if Sean Payton really believes that this is a playoff roster, you can't literally be at every single position having
That's
0.
fair. That's fair.
You need to be strong in some places. If he honestly believes that this is a playoff roster, here's another point too. Do you think most of these trades are most likely at week 8 or before the season begins?
So the linebacker one we talked about, and then maybe one of the lower depth safeties, I could see happening in the preseason, just because I think the roster is going to get tight.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
And I think the team, I think Sean Payton wants assets to semi-build the team in his vision. And if he's saying, man, I have to either cut this guy who I kind of like, or I can trade this guy who I also kind of, I don't know what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? If I can get assets for a guy as opposed to not getting assets for another guy, I think he might be wanting to do that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I just, I don't know. I feel like these certain guys have been thrown out there on the trade block, Frankie, because he thinks that there's other players in place to play for them in case. Like, let's talk about Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. They picked up Marcus Callaway, and then they also drafted Marvin Mims, and then they also picked up Will Jordan Humphrey and all these other things. Do you think he has as much faith or that much faith in even our starting linebackers to this point? Do you think he has a ton of faith in them?
I don't think Sean Payton.
Yeah.
I don't know if Sean Payton, I think Sean Payton might just be kind of just passing it off to Vance.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, interesting.
I don't know. I think he's kind of letting Vance kind of run the defense how he wants to run it, get the bodies that he wants to get for it. And again, I think what you made is a great point and that's a big part of my thing is I think he brought in his guys to play these positions, and I think there's going to be an odd man out somewhere. Yeah. We talked about the linebacker room. He brought in Drew Sanders, who I think we all like as a really talented player. We talked about the safety room. They brought in J.L. Skinner. We talked about the receiver room and the guys you said, which I was even going to mention. Another thing I've been interested in is if we see almost like a Trinity Benson-esque kind of move where they kind of try to hype up a receiver throughout the preseason, maybe give him some extra snaps. We see some extra storylines about this guy's going crazy in camp. You know, he's getting some extra 9 routes thrown his way, makes a catch or two. Maybe a guy like Brandon Johnson or Jalen Virgil or someone that could get moved. Because again, I just look at this roster and there's too many people at some of these positions that I like these guys, but I don't know where they're going to fit.
Right. No, you're
So what do you think about that? You think that's a possibility?
No, I do think that's a possibility. I don't know. I'm just kind of torn on the trade thing. I'm going back and forth in my head about when it would take place. I don't know if Sean Payton actually thinks this is a playoff team or not. I kind of just wait and see in that. I have no idea. It's coach talk. I have no idea. I have literally no idea.
I will be the happiest person on earth if this is a playoff team. I don't think this is a playoff
I don't think
team.
It is either.
I don't think
he thinks it does.
Talking smack to the Jets, hilarious. I love that he's throwing shade at Hackett. But, man, that Jets roster looks a whole lot better than Denver's IMO. And I'm a big Broncos fan.
Yeah.
Jets roster is pretty nice. it's a pretty nice roster. They got some good offensive line depth. I like a lot of their weapons on the outside. They just brought in a quarterback that I think we can all agree is probably better than Russ's right now. Sheesh.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. Tal comes in the comments. He says, what is your guys' ideal position for Casa, Nick Benito? I think that he is, and I think it's edge. I think that's definitely it. But do you think, Frankie, that he has the ability to be an every down edge, or do you think I'm going to take position as this, or just a guy that's situational?
I'll go just situational, but is there a world where Nick Benito is not a Sean when you look at the type, he is not a Vance Joseph, Sean Payton-esque defensive lineman type of guy at all. He's maybe he's another guy that could be a trade candidate if there's a team that still is in love with him. And the Frank Clark signing, let me just say this. Frank Clark signing, great. I love that they brought a veteran into the world. A little weird to me because they again, it pushes someone out, I think. I think it pushes out a guy like Jonathan Cooper. I think it pushes out Aaron Patrick Aaron Patrick is going to be a whole curveball in this because Aaron Patrick was this supposed special team ace, you know. He was loved by the coaching staff. Everyone was so hyped about Aaron Patrick. Tore his ACL last year. Does he carve out a roster spot in that outside linebacker room? Is he just as sad as it is he just does he not stand a chance? I
can't see Jonathan Cooper being cut. I really can't.
I don't think so either. But
I can't. I have such a hard time with it just because I understand your point. I really do understand your point. Very much so. I'm just looking at the skill level of him compared to everybody else as an every down edge guy, and I feel like he's just the most complete edge outside of Randy Gregory on this team.
Yeah. No, the biggest thing will be what they end up doing with Drew Sanders, and I mean, Aaron Patrick's a wild card, and then another guy I haven't gotten to mention on here is Thomas Incoom. I'm a big Thomas Incoom guy. I want to see what that guy can do. UDFA out of Central Michigan. I'm interested to see what juice he's got. So he's another guy that's kind of an interesting name that they threw a decent little UDFA contract at. And hey, every Broncos fan loves a good UDFA player. Who doesn't? Right.
You're not wrong. We've got Chris Harris from a UDFA. We got Philip
Phil
Lindsay.
Lindsay.
The years that we had him. We've had some good players as UDFAs. Chris Harris, I think, should be in the Ring of Fame one day. But that's my take. Anyways, Frankie, I think we're going to be done with that topic. I do want to, before we sign out, though, I want to ask you about the Broncos' new uniforms. How do you feel about their white helmets? This has been the most debated topic in the world, it feels like, on Twitter. So tell me, what do you make of those?
All right. Or I'd give them like a 6. I mean, like, here's the thing. Like, they got bodied. They set themselves up for failure so hard. What they needed to do was not have their announcement was way too long before the thing released. So then we got all these other great jerseys dropping day by day, and it's like, oh, what's Denver's gonna be? And then it was pretty, like, it was average, it was fine. I don't know. I'm glad they brought back the old logo. Looks pretty sick. I don't really love the white on orange. I know the orange looks good in the stadiums, but I've always been more of a blue jersey guy. I wear these even though I'm supposed to be an adult now and maybe stop wearing jerseys. This is a Jake the Snake. This is the Jake Plumber. This is a classic. This is a Reebok. You got to rock it. But, like, I like the navy. The blue, I think, is a much, like, it's just a nicer color on the eyes outside of when you're watching on TV in the stadium. But I think, like, as a actual article of clothing, I just prefer me some blue. So, not the biggest fan. I'm excited for whatever the throwback alternates end up being in a year and the new jerseys end up being, but a little bit of a letdown just because, goddamn, did Team Falcons red helmets? Oh my god,
dude, the Seahawks jerseys,
nasty.
Those got to be the sexiest uniforms in the league.
Did you see the JSN one-handed catch today? By the way, random side thing.
Yes, I did. And man, if he's doing the one-hand catches in that jersey, it's gonna be crazy because that's the best jersey combo in the league. I do have to say I do like the white helmets. I just don't like the combination they're with. I think that if you're gonna wear the white helmet or have the white helmet as an alternate, you need to do the white out. You need to have the white.
Oh, I agree.
White jersey with the white pants. I want my players with the white cleats. I want the white out if that's what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's kind of a weird combo, but I think the helmet itself is really cool. If I were rating the helmet on itself, I would say 8.5 out of 10. The combo all put together, I'm going to go with 6.5.
That's a good rating. I like that one. And then, I guess fans are at training camp tomorrow. Somebody sneak some footage and send it to me so I can I'm starving out here, man. All these other teams, the New York Jets are getting, like, live play-by-plays. I'm reading about Aaron Rodgers throwing picks or touchdowns. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? I don't even get to know what's going on with the Broncos Stadium. I don't get to know the Gatorade flavor. I don't get to know what songs they're listening to when they warm up. I don't get any of this, okay? I'm in Wisconsin, for God's sakes. I'm far away. I don't get to see any of this. So someone break in there, put like a phone in the hat, sneak like maybe like a button camera, some secret agent bullshit. Get me some clips. I'm trying to see this. I'm not going to post them. Yes. I won't spread them, but let me see some. I'm starving out here. I'm a thirsty man in the desert. You got to give me some water.
Well, Frankie, if you are starving for the training camp content, I have some news to break, an announcement on the podcast. I will be at some of these training camps bringing Joey's question of the day live to training camp. Some man on the street content, dude. I will be walking around and asking Joey's question of the day to random civilians, which I think will be hilarious.
That's going to be fantastic.
We're going to make it a YouTube video. I just need to secure my cameraman, Zach Seegers. Hopefully he agrees and we can get on some days. But that's my idea. That will be coming. Definitely will be coming. It's just the frequency that we're going to think about there. But Frankie, I want to sign us out here. I want everyone to follow Frankie at Frankie Films. Frankie, what else do you have going on?
I'm on the Irish NFL show. I'm on here. I'm posting stuff. I might start writing articles again soon. Who knows? And then I got clips going up. Joey, what's going on with you?
Yeah, just follow me at JR Drafts. Like, guys, we said yesterday, if you're watching from the Discord, we announced in the Discord. If you watched the last podcast, we announced it last podcast, but we are no longer associated with Mile High Sports. We're going completely independent with this thing. We have a lot more news to break, big news coming in the near future of what is going to be happening with the podcast. We will be staying independent, but there's some other interesting things coming on. Big news. So keep your eyes out for that. We'll keep everybody updated. But until next time, guys, just go like, subscribe, comment, and go Broncos.